How's everybody doing today? Thanks for tuning in with us to the Legacy Podcast. I want to start off today by saying Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there, especially my dad. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Joe Taylor.
And my name is Joe Taylor Sr.
Again, we want to thank everybody for tuning in with us. So you want to tell them about the podcast, Dad?
Yeah, this is an idea as we continue to develop different programs and ideas under the Larry Thomas Development Corporation. How can we reach youth? What can we do to help make that happen? We really feel like that mentorship is a strong part of it, and obviously we can't reach all 100 million or so youth, but doing something like this, sharing a little bit occasionally about different experiences that an old guy like me has had and what we think works, and then also being able to talk about what we want to do in the future. Hopefully the right persons are going to see it, the right youth are going to see it, the right adults that are going to see it, and they'll make those referrals to us. Those youth will do those self-referrals to us, and we'll be able to expand this program, this youth development process that we hope to be the best in the state and maybe someday the best in the country. So that's what we wanted to do. We've made a lot of promises going into developing this process, and so this is one of the first steps on being able to do that. I'm really excited to be the first one to be able to talk about this. And when JoJo and his wife Ashley asked me if I would come on and talk, I was excited about being able to do that. I don't see much excitement in talking about myself, but somebody else may see some excitement in it. And so I just want to talk about what I think works, and hopefully it'll reach the right ears, and just to be able to share that with the public.
So again, this is the Leave Your Legacy podcast. Obviously, my dad's going to be our first interviewee. We're going to be reaching out to other members of the community to speak. So basically, that's pretty much it. Again, thank you guys for joining us. So we'll go ahead and kick it off. All right. So, Dad, tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
One of the exciting things about the Larry Thomas Youth Development is that we have a focus on some areas of the town, the West Phoenix as far as and the South Phoenix. My upbringing is very, very similar to the target population that we want to target. I was born and raised in Phoenix. I don't know which home my mother took me home to after I was born, but I grew up on the east side of town for the first few years. Lived in the projects, and for all of those folks that have lived in the projects, that's a childhood dream, because there's hundreds and hundreds of other kids in the projects. And so being raised in the East Side Project, there's a lot of influences around you in the projects, both other youth and adult influences. My mother thought that it was probably not the best environment for us to live in, and so I know she worked very hard and very diligently in trying to get us moved from the project into our own home, and being able to shape that environment a little bit better without having the environment of living in the projects. So we moved from the East Side projects to the South Side, and I'll share a quick story with you. I'll tell you how much I enjoyed living in the projects. I can remember when we moved from the East Side projects, which was on 14th Street and Van Buren, they're still there, and we moved to 20th Street and Burgess Lane, which is about 3 or 4 blocks south of Southern Avenue in South Phoenix. Me and my brother, it was 5 of us, and my sister, 1. That's probably about a 20, 25-mile difference walk. When we moved to South Phoenix, we missed the project so much that we would every day after school walk back to the projects and spend our evenings in the project. Then my mother would come looking for us and chastise us about you guys got to stop doing that. You don't live in the projects anymore. You got to stay home. So it took us a while to acclimate moving away from the projects. When we moved to South Phoenix, and South Phoenix was different for us because it wasn't the projects. We didn't have as many kids around. We didn't have that same type of environment. The elementary school that we ended up going to was T.G. Barr Elementary School. So some of you folks from South Phoenix probably recognize that name and know that school. Very, very good school for me, very, very good school for my brothers that were with me. Graduated from the 8th grade from there. But unfortunately, my older brothers and sisters, and I'm the middle child, so I had 2 brothers older and 1 sister older, and they weren't doing very good in high school. My older sister went to Phoenix Union. My 2 older brothers were at South Mountain High School, and so my mother did her own assessment without talking to anybody, and decided that she wanted me to try a different environment for high school to see if we can get a different outcome from it. And that was a significant decision in my life. I didn't realize it at the time, but a pretty significant decision in my life. Not that South Mountain wouldn't have been the right school for me, or Phoenix Union would not have been the right school for me. But she was taking a chance, and so she had me enrolled in North Phoenix High School, and so that's where I went for the next 4 years at North High School. Lived in South Phoenix, as I said, enjoyed every bit of it. My junior year, we moved from 20th Street in South Phoenix over to the 19th Avenue area in the southwest part of the valley. And that was pretty significant too, because that was a newer up-and-coming area. And so it gave me an opportunity to, practice on transitioning. And when things happen in your life, you don't always know why they're happening and what good is going to come of it. But it gave me an opportunity moving into a new environment, continued going to North High School, and had an opportunity to go from high school to college from that particular area. And I'll tell you, I think my mother did everything right in terms of projects, South Phoenix, West Phoenix, and where we lived. And I came from a home where she stressed education. And I'll tell you, she didn't always know how to stress education. She just knew that if you didn't get good grades, that meant that something else was going to happen, and most of you probably know what that was. You're going to get your butt busted if you didn't get your grades. And so, we didn't have those conversations about, making a 3.0 or 4.0 or anything else like that. In her mind, it was make good grades, whatever that was, A, B, C, maybe. But that's what we ended up having to do.
So you mentioned that when you went to North, you went to different schools than your brothers and your sisters. What role models did you have during those times?
Well, for me growing up in South Phoenix, at the time I didn't know that I had any role models. I came from a fairly large family. It was 7 of us, 5 boys and 2 girls. Never known who my father was, and there was no strong male figures in my life except for coaches that were there. And I didn't see them as mentors and role models at the time. But as in preparations for this, when I look back on it, I can say that probably the strongest role model that I had was when I was the youngest and when I started playing football. When we lived in South Phoenix on Burgess Lane, there was a man that lived across the street from us. We used to call him Coach Denard, but he was the coach for the local Pop Warner team, and he needed players, and we wanted to play. My mother couldn't afford to pay for all of us to play football, but he figured out a way. I don't know if he paid for it himself, but he figured out a way to get me and my brothers on the football team. And so he was the first strong positive influence that sort of connected with us, being able to help us get on the football team. I'll tell you a little bit about what I remember about Coach Denard. He was a repairman for the Sears and Roebuck Company. He drove a repair truck, and that van was always, if we saw that van, we knew that he was home, and we knew how we needed to act and behave when he was around. At football practice, he would come from work directly to football practice, and we played football at the Salvation Army in South Phoenix on 16th Street and Broadway. He would come to practice. He would come from work directly to practice. And what I remember the most about him was his coaching ability, but also his strictness. He not only talked to us about football, but he talked to us about a lot of other things that were important about staying out of trouble, making sure we had our grades to where they were supposed to be, and being where you were supposed to be, when you were supposed to be there. And I can remember him wearing these big steel-toe boots. And I wouldn't say he threatened us with those boots, but what I would say is that we knew that he would use those boots if he had to, if we weren't doing what we were supposed to do.
Times were different back then.
Times were different back then. But I'll tell you what, for somebody like me that didn't have a strong male in my life, it was okay. It was probably what I needed at the time.
Good. So, again, with it being Father's Day today, can you tell me what's the biggest lesson you've learned as a father?
Okay. Well, again, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Coming from a home where there was no male in the home, as I said earlier, I never knew who my father was. I never even had anybody that I even called dad in my life. So I always knew that fatherhood was going to be very important to me. I wanted to be the best father that I could be no matter what the circumstances were. And we all know that there's no guarantees in relationships or anything else. But I always told myself that I would be the best father that I could be, period. I wasn't going to lie to my kids. I needed to make sure that I was going to be the best provider for my kids. I wanted to make sure that my kids respected me and I respected them. I wanted to make sure that whatever advice that I gave them, it was based upon making sure that they were going to be the best individual, the best little human being that I can create. And it was always important for me being there, no matter what. For people that know me personally, you probably heard me say that it's very, very important that I am in my kids' lives. And sometimes my wife even tells me, she say, you need to back up a little bit because they're adults now. And you don't need to be that much in their lives. But as far as I'm concerned, they'll tell me that if I need to do that. But I want to be the very best father that I can be, and now the very best grandfather that I can be to all of my grandkids. So probably the most important thing is being there, making sure that you're available to deal with whatever life circumstances are, making sure that you're there. You can't do anything if you're not there. And then helping them understand and navigate their way through this thing that we call life. Giving them some of your experiences, helping them process whatever issues or concerns that they may have or whatever problems that they have. You probably heard people talk about this scenario on an airplane where they said, if you have a sudden change of cabin pressure, put your mask on first, because if you lose consciousness, you won't be able to help your child that's there with you. I firmly believe in that. You need to make sure that you take care of yourself so you can take care of your family and make sure that they're performing the best that they can possibly perform. So that's probably the biggest lesson that I learned.
Yeah, and I can, again, I want to say thank you. As I mature as a man and as a father, a lot of the time, when you're young, you don't understand the sacrifices your parents make. So as I get older and mature as a dad, as a man, I just start to realize all the things my dad did, all the sacrifices he made for not just myself, but the rest of my family. And for him to grow up without a father figure in his life and still be the great man that I look up to every day, I'm forever grateful and blessed. So all I can say is thank you. All right, so next question. We're going to, what's the best advice you can give a young man on helping him plan his career rather than simply just finding a job?
Okay, that's a good question. I can tell you based upon my experience, and I haven't talked a whole lot about me and my careers, but based upon my experience, every single opportunity that I've availed myself to, working with the Department of Corrections, Department of Juvenile Corrections, and in private corrections for the last 35 years, every single opportunity that I've had to progress in my career, I can tell you without a doubt, the one thing that helped me the most was being able to apply for those positions, being eligible for those positions, and every single time there was an educational component associated with it. Now, it doesn't mean that you couldn't apply for those positions, but there was a strong educational preference component with it. And so when you had the education, it gave you a leg up on other folks that didn't have the education. And so I would say education, being able to sit down at the table, being able to compete for positions, making sure that you understand what the job is, making sure that you're eligible for the job. Now, I'll tell you this, education isn't for everybody, but I can tell you that if you go the route of learning the trade, or you go the route of going to a public education or college or university, I think the important part is sticking to it, making sure that you understand what it is, and making sure that as you develop in whatever job that it is, that you become a professional, your bosses or anybody else around you understand that you understand what the job is and that you can do the job. So I would probably say the most important thing is making sure that you understand what direction that you want to go to. For this development program that we're trying to put together, being a part of a mentor is to help folks think about what direction do I want to go in? What direction do I want to go in? And what are the steps that are the most important in being successful in that particular position? Whatever those steps are. the most important thing is being able to reach whatever your potentials are. Okay, so if your potentials is going in this direction, helping you be able to reach that potential. And I can remember early in my career, I would come home and talk to my wife about positions that were available. And I said, I don't know if I'm going to apply for that. And my wife would push me. She saw potential in me that I didn't always see in myself. And I didn't always have strong mentors in the workforce that would be encouraging me and pushing me. So having strong support from your wife, having strong support from your family, having strong support from your community, I think is vitally important.
Awesome. So another question, you mentioned mentors. If we have any young men listening right now, what qualities would you say makes a good mentor?
Well, I would probably say if you have the heart for it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can talk about those intangible things, but you have to have a heart for it. You have to have the ability to have empathy. You have to have the ability to be able to say, I want to help someone reach their potential. I want to help someone, this young man, this young boy, this young girl, be able to achieve whatever it is that they want to achieve, be able to reach whatever potentials that they have. So those qualities have, and when I talk about have the heart for it, I'm talking about when you take on a role of being a mentor. Mentors don't work 8 to 5. Mentors work all the time. When you connect yourself to the lives of a young person, young man, young lady, or whatever, you need to be available to be able to share the heart, be able to talk about what those concerns are, be able to talk about what your plans are, be able to talk about what you need to be successful, what you need to be in order to reach your full potential. So that's the biggest part as far as I'm concerned, is being able to, you first look introspectively and be able to say, am I ready to take on this role? And I understand that this role is going to be more than just meeting with a person once a week or twice a week and being able to talk about it, whatever their concerns are, whatever their plans are, whatever it may be. It means being available. It means understand. It may mean doing the research with them, or it may mean doing the research for them. But you become a surrogate parent as far as I'm concerned. You become a surrogate uncle, a surrogate grandfather, being able to help them understand. Share with them your experiences. Share with them those things that have worked for you. You know, when we talk about a mentor, and I've had some folks that in the world of work that have been mentors for me, they were always a lot older, and I could say that they were a little bit wiser in understanding what I needed to do with regards to work. When you're talking about somebody's dream, when you're talking about somebody's hopes, when you're talking about somebody's life, I think you really have to understand and be able to share with them what you have learned along the way in order to be successful. And I think along the way, that helps you become a good mentor.
Okay. Well, let's go back to, you said you grew up in South Phoenix, and we know there's a lot of different obstacles that you have to overcome growing up in South Phoenix. Not the wealthiest of families, no father figure in the house. What helped you stay on track to finish high school, go on to college, finish college? What did you use to navigate and kind of stay on the right path?
Well, I'll tell you, JoJo, and we've talked about this before. I didn't always feel like that I was on the right path. I think I ended up on the right path, but I didn't always feel like that I was going in the right direction. Um, One of the things that helped me the most, or the thing that helped me the most, is that I was a good athlete. And being a good athlete had individuals outside of my environment, outside of my world, that would come to me and talk about opportunities and potentials and benefits of being able to go on beyond high school, being a good athlete. I would listen to those folks. I didn't always follow what they said at the time because I didn't have that person, that father or that mother or somebody in my ear saying, this is a great opportunity for me. But I'll tell you, being a good athlete helped me the most. I can tell you after high school, I received a football scholarship, and getting a football scholarship, it provided more adults in my life to be able to provide some direction for me. And so I was lucky in that sense. But I would say is that even in spite of that, the foundation of going to school, going to college, being able to play sports and everything else, the few adults that were in my ear at the time, the most important thing that I had to do was be able to make good choices, because all of those things along the way, none of that means anything if you're making bad choices along the way. So for me, in the environment that I lived in and the world that I lived in, for me, the most important thing that I had to do quickly was to be able to learn how to make good choices for myself. And I'll tell you, for folks that know me, I say this all the time. It's real easy to get in trouble, and sometimes it's very, very difficult to get out of trouble. And I was the lucky one. I shared with you guys a little while ago that I got 4 other brothers and 2 sisters. And I can tell you that working in the Department of Corrections was difficult for me at times, because there was a lot of family and friends that were also on the other side in the Department of Corrections. I was lucky enough that I was working in the Department of Corrections, but now we don't have to depend on luck, because there's organizations, Larry Youth Development Program, but there's other organizations as well that can help you, guide you, help plan with you, so you don't have to depend as much on luck, not to end up in a place like that.
Again, with this Larry Thomas Youth Foundation, we're trying to reach the youth to help them reach the highest level they can, whether that be, well, first we want it to be in education, sports, vocational, wherever we can to help these kids out. Okay, the Larry Thomas Youth Foundation. All right, so in your tenure, you talked about working with the Department of Corrections. In your tenure serving our most valuable youth, what do you wish the system or our society knew about them that, basically that they don't know, and how you've helped them out?
Well, I'll share a little bit more with you about my background. I worked for the Arizona Department of Corrections for 21 years. Most of that time I worked with the Department with youth in the Department of Corrections. So I started out with the adults, went to juvenile, and for the last 13, 14 years working in juveniles. There's so many things that I would do that if I was king for a day, that I would do differently in the Department of Corrections, in the adult side, as well as the juvenile side. What would I do differently if I had one pick? I would probably say figure out a way that we understand the families as well as the individual together. And when we talk about working with them holistically, being able to understand them, the environment, the kids, the families together. There's so many things that have gone wrong in our system. Dysfunctional families, education, crime, poverty, broken families. There's so many things that we can improve on and get better at. But in every single instance in my career, working with juveniles, working with youth, when the kids knew that you cared about them, then you can see the light go on. You can see something happen magically with them. And I don't know how you make that happen with everybody. If a kid doesn't believe that you care, even in the adults, if the adult doesn't believe that you care, if an individual doesn't believe that you care, you can do anything. You can say anything. And it's almost a 50-50 chance that it may or may not work. So figuring out a way to help them understand. I'll share a story with you. In my career, I was for a time, I was the superintendent of Adobe Mountain School. And most of you know what Adobe Mountain School is for juveniles in this state. And so I had rose through the rank of being an officer all the way up to being the superintendent of that facility. When I became the superintendent, staff treat you differently, kids treat you differently. So I knew that if I heard a kid refer to me as Mr. Taylor, I knew why they were calling me Mr. Taylor. And I'm talking about outside of Adobe Mountain. And so if I was at the store or in the community and if a kid came up to me and said, "Hi, Mr. Taylor, how you doing?" I didn't always recognize them, but I recognized that phrase. And I knew where I knew that phrase from when they said Mr. Taylor. And for a period of time, Larry worked for the Department of Juvenile Corrections. He worked at our Black Canyon facility next door to Adobe Mountain. And I just want to share this with you about how big his heart was, because Larry would come by the house and he always had a kid in tow, 2 kids in tow, 4 or 5 kids in tow, and they would come in the house. And some of the kids would come in, occasionally a kid would come in and refer to me as Mr. Taylor. And I don't know how many times that I would, pull Larry aside and say, was that kid at Adobe Mountain? Was that kid at Black Canyon or whatever? And I said, Larry, I don't think that's a good idea just to be bringing them by the house. And Larry would say, Dad, they're changed. They're not the same person that they used to be. And he said, when you start working with somebody, you just can't cut that off. You just can't cut that off because they got in trouble. And he said, you have to continue working with them. And at that point, Larry was no longer in corrections. He was working in the school system. But he still maintained a relationship with those youth that he had when he worked in corrections. So I knew when he came in the house and somebody said, "How you doing, Mr. Taylor?" I knew why they were saying, "Hi, Mr. Taylor," is because at some point, I had them at Adobe Mountain or Black Canyon or Eagle Point or any of our juvenile prisons throughout the state of Arizona. And they had run across Larry, and Larry would drag you in tow because he was going to help you get better, whether you wanted to or not. If you didn't have any goals, if you didn't have any plan, if you didn't think that you was going to reach your potential, you had to prove it to him. So that would be the biggest thing, and you can't always teach that. You can't always train that with all the stuff that's going on in the world right now, with police brutality, Black Lives Matter, all of that stuff. One of the areas that they talk about is community policing. Well, they talk about community policing because you will get an opportunity to get to know somebody. when you have an opportunity to talk to somebody when they're not in trouble, when you have the opportunity to talk to somebody when they're in trouble, but you know them, it makes a difference. It absolutely makes a difference. So the biggest thing is being able to teach somebody to have a heart, being able to teach somebody to have a little bit of empathy, being able to teach somebody to be able to relate to what that individual has gone through and help them understand, show them that you care as much about them as anybody else would in their circumstances.
That's awesome. Yeah, so a lot of people don't know what got Larry into coaching was when he was working in the juvenile system. He started a flag program, and it was within the pods, right? It was different pods would play against each other, and it went from what he told me, it went from these kids were fighting between each other to once the football season started, it brought the pod closer together. Kids stopped fighting, they start listening to the staff, and he's seen that through sports, if you reach a kid through sports, you can then kind of mold them and help them get back and give back to society, which is great. Okay, so what advice could you give the youth on how they would want to leave a legacy?
It's a good question. Good question. I would ask them first to reflect, you know, what are you doing? You know, what are you doing to contribute to your circumstances, and what are you doing to contribute to anybody else's circumstances in your circle of community? And then I think when you can figure out concretely how you're contributing to your success, the community's success, your family's success, your friend's success, and if you're a mentor, how you're contributing to the development and success of someone that you're mentoring, I think it should be pretty easy about what is your legacy going to be, and what can you do? You know, we didn't have to study very hard to figure out what Larry Thomas's legacy was. You know, for those of you that attended his funeral and you saw the number of youth that got up and talked about how much time he spent with them, you know, one of the things that I heard was many of those youth felt like that they were the only person in the world working with Larry. And Larry had hundreds and hundreds of individuals that he was working with. So when you think about what your legacy is that what are you doing as an individual to help make this world better? You know, there's a lot going on in this world right now, you know, with Black Lives Matters and black injustice and, you know, and politics and everything else. You know, what can you do to contribute to making any of that better? And I'm not promoting getting into politics. I'm not promoting doing anything but doing that introspective assessment of yourself, asking yourself, what is my legacy going to be? What have I done? What did I do to help make things better in this world? And if you can answer that question quickly, you know, for me, it was a job, but it was also a calling to be able to help individuals. I did it in the juvenile system, and I also did it in the adult system. I wanted individuals to know if you came in and we had a conversation and we talked about it, and if I made a commitment to you and you made a commitment to me, that we were going to hold each other accountable for that commitment. And so, and it just made things a whole lot better working with individuals in the system. how can you go about doing that? Like I said, take a look at who you are today. Take a look at what you're doing today. Is there time in your world to be able to coach a youth up? Is there time in your world to be able to provide your opinion about whatever the situation is? Is there time in your world to be able to give advice about something? Is there time in your world to be able to just give a person a ride or whatever that might be? But to be able to take a look at yourself and say, have I done everything that I can when you become aware of a situation or a circumstance? Have I done everything that I can to help make that better for that young man or that young lady? And if you can say that you've done everything that you can, it's probably going to be better for them. But if you have done everything that you can, then you could look at yourself and say, I can move on to the next person, or I can continue in this role that I'm in right now. So how do you do that? I think you start with your heart first. You got to be able to understand people, and you got to be genuine, and you got to have some empathy for your fellow man, for the fellow youth, for the fellow young lady that you're dealing with.
Excellent response. So one of Larry's sayings is, as I coach with him, he got me into coaching. One of his sayings that he would say to the coaches is, each one, reach one. If you reach one, hopefully that one can go reach one, and hopefully that one that they reach can go reach one. So I love the response. All right, so you kind of touched on this a little bit, but last question is, what do you want your legacy to be?
First of all, I want to be around to continue this legacy for a long time. I had a conversation with someone last week, and I said I'm very excited about Larry Thomas Youth Development that we've started. And I'll be turning 61 in about 10 days, and I said I want to hit it hard. And I want to continue this, and I want to hit it strong. And I told that person at least for the next 10 years, but it'll probably be longer than that. I want my legacy to be that when somebody mentions my name, Joseph Taylor, in relationship to corrections, Joseph Taylor in relationship to being a friend, Joseph Taylor in relationship to being a mentor, Joseph Taylor in relationship to being a father. I want them to say that he cared about his community, he cared about individuals, he cared about kids, he cared about making sure that if there was an opportunity for him to help, that's what he did, he helped. I want my legacy to be that folks will say, he was a good guy. He was a good guy. And if most people say that about me, then I will feel like that I was successful. I want them to say I was a good corrections administrator. I want them to say that I was a good friend. I want them to say that I was a good mentor. And he was just an all-around good person. And it's not hard to do. A lot of people say it's hard to do. It doesn't always mean that you're giving them a lot of money, or you're giving them, tangible things. The most important thing that you can give an individual is of yourself. Give them the time, give them the wisdom that you have. Sit down and share what you know with an individual. Share what you know with an organization. Volunteer and help folks understand that you care about them, and help them start to care about themselves in the right way. So that's what I want my legacy to be. That people will say that Joe cared about me even if I didn't have a personal relationship with him, I know that he cared about me. He cared about my circumstance, and he cared about helping people get better.
Nice, nice. So I'll start it off by saying that, Dad, you are a great father. I love you. I appreciate you. Forever blessed to have you in my life. Thank you. Just want to give a shout out to all the dads out there. Again, happy Father's Day. Thank you guys for joining us. You got anything else, Dad?
Just happy Father's Day. It was a privilege to be the first one, but it won't be our last one. And we hope to have some interesting individuals come and talk about what they plan to do and what they have done in their particular perspectives, their jobs. So I look forward to our next one.
Definitely, yeah. Mentors out there, beware. We're going to be contacting you, and you guys are going to be sitting in the lovely chair next to me. Again, we thank you guys for joining us. Have a blessed rest of your day.